Back with breaking news on President Trump's war in Iran and the confirmation from U.S. Central Command that 2 U.S. service members were killed Friday in Jordan. Officials say that 2 were killed in action. 1 is reported still missing. 4 were medically treated for minor injuries and discharged. Joining me now is our friend Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury, member of the House Oversight and Natural Resources Committees. Congresswoman, welcome back to the show. First, your reaction to this terribly sad news from CENTCOM.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just absolutely devastating to lose service members in the line of duty. It just breaks my heart, especially coming from a family of veterans. I mean, it's just tragic. And I think it just reinforces the reality that the United States should never have been pulled into this conflict to begin with, and that Donald Trump is waging an illegal war that is costing the lives of our service members, thousands of civilians across the Middle East, and billions in taxpayer dollars. And he is currently asking Congress for more money, and we need to tell him no, absolutely not. We have already passed multiple war powers resolutions to stop this war, and it needs to stop.
Iran has certainly intensified its rhetoric in the last 24 hours. So what options does the president have remaining? Is there any way to prevent a wider escalation?
I mean, like I said, I think that the United States should have never gotten involved in this conflict to begin with. In fact, we know that the president was advised by his own national intelligence advisors and others to not get involved in this war. There were no clear objectives from the beginning. And over the last several months, we have seen a president that has flailed to even outline objectives for how to bring the conflict he did start to a close. But it is absolutely imperative that Congress step in, that my colleagues across the aisle who have been too weak to actually stand up to the president step in at this moment and to advise him to pull back, to stop this war, to remove our troops, and to stop the escalation of violence in the Middle East.
Let me pivot to what happened on Thursday when the president delivered a speech detailing those unfounded claims of election interference. What were your takeaways from his remarks?
Well, I think my takeaways are similar to what we've seen over the last 6 years, and that is that Donald Trump is a sore loser, and he cannot take that he lost the 2020 election. But it's really important that the American people understand that this is bigger than just Donald Trump relitigating his 2020 false election denialism claims. He is really setting the groundwork in motion for 2026. And that is because Donald Trump is losing right now. Across the board in every major national poll, we know that Republicans and Donald Trump are going to lose the midterms. And it's because they have passed historically unpopular legislation. They have gutted healthcare. They have gutted food assistance. They've gutted education. They've given kickbacks to billionaires. The president has been looting our national treasury. He's fighting this illegal war in the Middle East, and the economy is in shambles for working people. And so they know that they can't win on the merits of their policies, and that's why the president is giving a national address, trying to call into question what is happening with the election, trying to call into question integrity of our election systems. And it's why he's pushing to pass the Save America Act, which would disenfranchise tens of millions of Americans. So we know this is all about cheating. We know this is all about Donald Trump's ego. And we know that this is laying the pretext for his attempt to try to deny the election outcome, which he is poised to lose.
MS Now reports more than 24 House Democrats held a secret strategy session on plans to counter the Trump administration if it does try to interfere with the midterm election process. So the issue has been a consistent concern, but the tenor of these conversations, Congresswoman, is it becoming more of a when, not if?
Well, the House Democratic leadership and caucus has been meeting for months with partner organizations to address the ongoing attacks that we've seen in the election system. whether that is preparing litigation and these attacks on voting redistricting that have happened all over the South in the wake of the Khaled decision by the Supreme Court. We've been preparing lawsuits in a worst case scenario in case something does happen around Election Day. And yes, we have been working with states and local governments and amongst ourselves to prepare for a worst case scenario. And I think that the president's address ups the ante and the alarm bells that he is potentially plotting to do something around the election. But it's also important to know that we've seen this story before. We saw January 6th. We saw the way he tried to take the 2020 election. And I think there are already rumors around Washington, D.C. that he and his allies could be potentially plotting something similar in terms of denying the election results and trying to stop the counting of election votes in the Congress next January. So we are preparing all scenarios, and we have to take these threats very seriously.
Absolutely. Let's pivot to Jay Clayton, of course, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, who was on Capitol Hill for his Senate confirmation hearing. Here's how he responded to questions about the 2020 election.
Answer the question. Who won the 2020 election?
I have answered the question.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer? You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election, but you asked to lead America's intelligence community? Isn't it humiliating to be unable to answer this question, to have to indulge the president's delusions?
How concerning is this exchange? Is it a foreshadowing of Clayton's likely tenor if he is confirmed as DNI?
Yeah, and I think it's ironic that that exchange happened the day before the president gave his address to the nation, in which he announced that he was declassifying intelligence reports that came through the DNI coordination process. So it is absolutely alarming. The fact that he is talking about appointing and trying to confirm somebody who will not even admit that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. And we see that Donald Trump is trying to use national security and intelligence information to substantiate his election denialism claims. These things are intimately intertwined. But I also want to note that Jay Clayton, in addition to his refusal to admit the 2020 election results, was also involved in the Trump administration's lack of prosecution of the Epstein investigation. In fact, when we questioned Pam Bondi just a few weeks ago in her recorded transcribed interview in front of the Oversight Committee, she continued to note that Jay Clayton was the attorney who had been assigned by the Trump administration to investigate Epstein claims that never happened. So I think that the Senate should soundly reject his nomination. If you cannot speak truth about the fundamental basics of American democracy, you have no business serving at the head of national intelligence.
I have one more question relative to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who, of course, is another Trump pick who's facing hard questions. During his Wednesday confirmation hearing, Republican Senator Thom Tillis told Blanche to meet with Epstein's victims or don't expect his support. Blanche complied, but in a statement, Epstein survivor Annie Farmer said, "I found him abrasive, condescending, and intentionally non-committal, a marked contrast to his public testimony during his confirmation hearing." Will this hurt his chances of getting confirmed, or will the non-committal forced appearance be enough for senators to give their support?
I mean, I think we've been clear since day one. Todd Blanche has no business serving as the Attorney General, whether it is his failure to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the slush fund he tried to create, the pardons of January 6ers, and the fact that he even claimed during his confirmation hearing that he is the president's personal attorney. He has weaponized the Attorney General's office and should not be serving. But will ultimately Republicans block his nomination? I think that we have seen very little evidence to date that even though they ask hard questions in these confirmation hearings, they have not yet blocked any of his major nominations, except for Bill Pulte, who was clearly unqualified to serve in national intelligence. So I think the jury is out, but we will find out within the next week.
We will. Congressman Melanie Stansbury, it's always good to talk with you, my friend. Thank you so much.